10 days is all it took. 10 days ago, Anthropic told the world about Mythos and locked it away behind 11 organizations. But yesterday, the White House sent a memo preparing to put it inside the Defense Department, Treasury, Commerce, Homeland Security, Justice, State. The same administration that classified Anthropic as a supply chain risk, using a statute designed for foreign adversaries, is now rushing to get the model into every room where national power is actually exercised. And across the Atlantic at the IMF spring meetings, finance ministers weren't talking about tariffs or interest rates. They were talking about one model from one company and whether any government on earth is ready for it. Let me give you the shape of this because the speed is critical. Gregory Barbacchia, the federal chief information officer, sent the memo. Subject line: Mythos model access. The Office of Management and Budget is establishing protections to let 6 cabinet-level agencies begin using the model in the coming weeks. This is the same OMB, the same administration that invoked supply chain risk authorities against Anthropic just 6 weeks ago. The DC Circuit hasn't resolved that legal challenge. May 19th oral arguments are still on the calendar. Nothing about the legal standoff is changing here, apparently. What changed, though, is that Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, the US Treasury, and UK financial regulators all moved first. And the government apparently decided it couldn't afford to be the last institution in the room without access to the most capable intelligence system on the planet. Now pan to Washington, not the executive branch, but the other Washington, the IMF spring meetings. Canada's finance minister, François-Philippe Champagne, compared the Mythos challenge to the Strait of Hormuz, but then corrected himself. The Strait of Hormuz, he clarified, we know where it is and we know how large it is, but Mythos is the unknown unknown. Christine Lagarde, head of the ECB, described Anthropic as, quote, a responsible company that is suddenly thinking, could be really good, but if it falls into the wrong hands, could be really bad. Close the quote there. But then she admitted that no governance framework exists to manage any of that. The Bank of England's Andrew Bailey asked what might be the most honest question any central banker has voiced in years. Go too early with regulation and you miss the target. Go too late and things get out of control. And he didn't say which side they're on, because nobody knows. Barclays CEO, C.S. Venkatakrishnan, was blunter. This is what the new world is going to be, he said. And Anthropic's UK head, Pip White, confirmed British banks will receive Mythos access within days. Not weeks, but days. Feel the compression of this. April 7th, Anthropic acknowledges Mythos publicly. April 8th, Project Glasswing gives critical infrastructure operators early access. April 10th, Goldman and JP Morgan disclose deployments on earnings calls. April 16th, Bloomberg reports the model can autonomously hack the systems underneath modern computing. April 17th, the White House prepares to give it to 6 departments that run the country, and every major finance ministry on earth is talking about it all at once. 10 days. Nuclear governance took decades. Financial derivatives regulation took years after the 2008 crisis. Internet regulation is still unfinished after a quarter century. This capability went from announcement to global institution integration in the time it takes most organizations to schedule a meeting about scheduling a meeting. And that last part, the pace, is what Bailey's question really gets at. Governance for things that move this fast cannot be the old kind of governance with a shorter deadline. It has to be something new. Continuous and adaptive, built to update as fast as the capability it's trying to govern. We don't have a name for that yet, but the finance ministers at the IMF are inventing it, trying to anyway, in real time, whether they realize it or not. Meanwhile, Anthropic shipped something yesterday that tells you a lot about how they think this should work. Claude Opus 4.7, their most capable, generally available model. Top of the public leaderboards for agentic coding, no surprise there, 64.3% on the SWE Bench Pro. Better than its predecessor at complex engineering, image analysis, instruction following, etc., etc. Intuit, Harvey, Replit, Cursor, Notion, Shopify, all of them tested it before launch. It is strong. And Anthropic went out of its way to tell you that it's weaker than Mythos on every single evaluation. Why would a company release a product and immediately say, oh, by the way, the one that you can't have is better? Well, because Opus 4.7 isn't just a product, it's a stare. The system card says it explicitly. We stated that we would keep Claude Mythos previews release limited and test new cyber safeguards on less capable models first. Opus 4.7 is the first such model. That was a quote. During training, the team deliberately experimented with reducing the model's cyber capabilities. Vulnerability reproduction scored 73.1%, down from 73.8% on the previous version. A small step backward in one domain on purpose to test whether you can dial dangerous capability down without breaking everything else. And they also launched a cyber verification program. Security professionals who verify their credentials get access to Opus 4.7 with certain safeguards relaxed. The findings from that program feed into decisions about when and how to broaden Mythos-class access. Each model generation becomes a proving ground for the safety infrastructure of the next one. You don't release the most dangerous thing. You release the thing just below it, test your constraints against it, learn, and then decide whether to open the next door. That's what Anthropic is doing now. And this matters for you personally because it's a template. If staged release through graduated constraint actually prevents the catastrophic misuse that everyone's worried about, then this is how every future dangerous capability reaches the world, not through a single launch decision, through a pipeline. And the speed of that pipeline is set by how fast the safety testing produces results, not by how fast the marketing department wants to ship. Okay, let's shift away, completely different domain, same underlying phenomena. Physical Intelligence, a San Francisco robotics startup, published research yesterday on a model called Pi 0.7. It's a generalist AI that controls robots, and it did something that surprised the people who built it. It performed tasks it was never trained on. The example that was really interesting with me, it was an air fryer. The team wanted to see if the robot could cook a sweet potato. When they searched the entire training data set, they found exactly two relevant episodes, one where a different robot pushed an air fryer closed, and one from an open source data set where another robot placed a plastic bottle inside one. That's it. No cooking demonstrations, no instruction about what an air fryer does, no example of placing food inside or operating any of the controls. But the model took those two fragments, and that was just the pushing it closed fragment and the putting something inside fragment, and then some other generally available information somehow, combined them with broader knowledge from web pre-training and made a passable attempt at cooking. When a human then walked it through step-by-step instructions, the way that you would explain a task to a new employee, it succeeded. Researcher Ashwin Balakrishna described buying a random gear set and then asking the robot to rotate it. Their quote, "It just worked." Co-founder Sergey Levine drew a direct comparison to language models. Once you cross the threshold where the system stops only doing exactly what it was trained on and starts remixing skills in new ways, capabilities go up more than linearly with the amount of data. And that phrase, more than linearly, is the one to hold on to. It means the curve bends upward. Each additional piece of training data produces more capability than the last one did. And if that's true in physical manipulation, where the gap between digital training and real-world execution has always been widest, the implications for every field that involves doing things with physical objects are enormous. The team measured Pi 0.7 against their own specialist models as well, purpose-built systems trained on individual tasks like making coffee, folding laundry, assembling boxes. The generalists matched them across the board. One model doing everything as well as dedicated systems doing one thing each. And that's the inflection point that language models hit several years ago. We're watching it now arrive in the physical world, and even faster. The April 7th edition of the Century Report tracked generalists' Gen 1 system hitting 99% success rates on delicate manufacturing tasks. Pi 0.7 adds something different, not just reliability, but the ability to synthesize skills from fragments and apply them to situations the system has never before encountered. If you work in manufacturing, logistics, food service, warehouse operations, this is the trajectory that leads to your next coworker being a machine that learned how to do your job from two training examples and a conversation. That's coming. Okay, let's shift away again. Two metabolic findings dropped yesterday that I want to walk through really carefully because they both challenge things that scientists thought were settled. First, the University of Oklahoma. Researchers identified a hormone called FGF21 that reverses obesity in mice. Now, of course, we've covered the GLP-1 revolution extensively. Semaglutide, oral formulations, genetic resistance variants, the Stanford peptide discovery from April 13th. GLP-1 drugs work by suppressing appetite, so you simply eat less and you lose weight. FGF21 targets the same brain region, the hindbrain, but it does something completely different. Instead of reducing how much energy goes in, it increases how much energy the body burns. So same neighborhood in the brain, but the opposite side of the mechanism. Lead researcher Matthew Pothoff said they expected to find the signal going to the hypothalamus because that's where most metabolic signaling was assumed to happen. Instead, it went to the hindbrain. Specifically, he mentioned the nucleus of the solitary tract and the area postrema, which is communicating with the parabrachial nucleus. Now, I realize there are a lot of anatomical terms in there, but the point is the brain's weight regulation system is more complex than anyone modeled previously. There are multiple control circuits, and they can all be activated independently. FGF21 analogs are already in clinical trials for a severe form of fatty liver disease. So knowing exactly which brain circuit they activate opens the door to more targeted therapies, one that might avoid your G1 side effects and bone loss that current versions can produce. If you or someone you love is on a GLP-1 drug and dealing with side effects, this is directly relevant. A parallel pathway, same therapeutic goal but different biological route, means options are multiplying. Okay, second finding. UCLA. Scientists discovered that a specific type of immune cell in the liver, macrophages, can become what they call zombie cells, senescent, still alive and still active, but no longer functioning properly. Instead, they flood the surrounding tissue with inflammatory signals. So the team identified a molecular fingerprint, two proteins, P21 and TREM2, that reliably marks these zombie macrophages. In young mice, about 5% of liver macrophages carry this signature, but in older mice, 60 to 80%. Now, when they treated mice with the drug called ABT-263, which selectively eliminates senescent cells, liver size dropped from about 7% of body weight to a healthier 4 to 5%. Body weight also fell roughly 25%, and the mice were still eating a high-fat, high-cholesterol diet. No dietary change, but the damage reversed anyway. The team confirmed the same zombie macrophage signatures were elevated in diseased human liver biopsies compared to healthy ones. And they found that excess cholesterol itself can push macrophages into senescence, meaning an unhealthy diet doesn't just cause liver damage directly, it accelerates biological aging at the cellular level. Clearing the accumulated damage reverses conditions that diet changes alone cannot. Both of these findings share something with the robot story, systems revealing capabilities and mechanisms that exceeded what their inputs predicted. A hormone targeting a brain region nobody expected. Immune cells accumulating damage through a process nobody had mapped. The body, like the robot, is more capable and more complex than the models that we built to describe it. And the tools and the frameworks available to researchers today, computational, experimental, analytical, are uncovering that complexity at a pace that keeps surprising even the people doing the work. Okay, let's shift away again for a quick energy beat because the physical infrastructure underneath all of this continues to scale. New England's largest grid battery came fully online in Medway, Massachusetts. 250 megawatts, already bigger than the 175 megawatt crosstown battery in Maine that was the regional record earlier this year. And a 700 megawatt successor, 2.8 gigawatt hours, is in development at a former oil storage site in Everett, targeting 2028 or 2029. That would be among the largest standalone batteries in the country. An oil storage facility becoming one of America's biggest batteries. That's an awesome transition, and that's in a single address. The driver is Massachusetts Clean Peak Standard, a policy requiring utilities to serve growing percentages of peak demand with clean electricity. Midday solar gets stored. Evening demand gets served. The policy created a revenue structure that commercial investors can underwrite, and after years of small 1 to 5 megawatt projects, the state is now producing multi-hundred megawatt installations. Now, separately, U.S. community solar crossed 10 gigawatts of installed capacity, over 8 gigawatts more in the pipeline. Though installations fell to 25% in 2025 as early markets like New York and Maine saturated, Growth is now shifting to Illinois, the Mid-Atlantic, and new programs are gearing up in Ohio, Iowa, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. The sector is maturing from small distributed projects to community scale installations up to 20 megawatts. It's not a single breakthrough. This is the steady accumulation of policy, technology, and capital all flowing in the same direction, turning scattered projects into grid significant infrastructure. All right, let's talk about what shipped. A lot of new releases dropped yesterday. The headliner we've already covered, Opus 4.7, Anthropic's new top generally available model across all Claude products and the API. OpenAI introduced GPT Rosalind, which is a frontier reasoning model tuned specifically for life sciences research workflows, named after Rosalind Franklin. Now, if you work in biology, drug discovery, or biotech, then this is a purpose-built tool aimed at your domain. OpenAI also updated Codex with computer use, in-app browsing, image generation, memory, and plugins for macOS and Windows, turning it into a much more capable desktop agent. Google released Android CLI, which is a terminal-first interface for Android development designed to work with AI agents, building Android apps up to 3 times faster. Qwen, a few days ago, shipped an open-weight 35 billion parameter model under Apache 2.0 with 3 billion active parameters aimed at agentic coding. And Cloudflare actually launched 3 things at once: Artifacts, a Git-compatible storage system for AI agents, an email service so that agents can send and receive messages, and an AI platform inference layer for running agent workloads. So that Cloudflare triple is worth noting because it's infrastructure for agents, not for humans using agents. So the plumbing of the agentic era is ripe territory, and Cloudflare really seems to be moving in. Here's what I think we need to carry from today. A government that tried to ban a company is now rushing to deploy its most powerful model inside 6 departments. Finance ministers who usually argue about interest rates spent their meetings talking about a single AI system. A robot learned to cook from 2 training examples about something else entirely. And scientists found that your body has metabolic pathways and aging mechanisms that decades of research had missed. Pathways that can be activated and reversed right now with drugs already in trials. What I keep thinking about is Andrew Bailey's question: when is the right moment to build the framework? Too early and you miss, too late and you lose control. Every institution on earth is facing that question simultaneously. Governments, banks, hospitals, grid operators, robotics labs, and none of them can wait for the others to go first. Very soon, watch for whether the White House memo actually results in Mythos deployment at cabinet agencies or whether the legal standoff reasserts itself before the access is live. And watch for whether Anthropic's stage release model through Opus 4.7 produces the safety data needed to open Mythos-class capability more broadly. And of course, pay attention to the next robotics demo that shows compositional generalization, because when a robot can learn a new task from fragments of old ones, the number of tasks it can perform isn't limited by its training data anymore. It's limited by what you ask it to do. We'll see you tomorrow.